There is a mysterious egg that we see over and over on Roger's ship that has never been explained. What happened to it? Why is it there? What did it hatch? And why is it important? Well, I'm telling you, Luffy might have come out of that egg. Yeah. Now, you're probably saying that this is the stupidest fucking theory of all time. Why would Luffy come out of an egg? We literally know who Luffy's father is. It's Dragon. That means that Luffy must have had a mother. We're still waiting to meet her. Why would he come out of an egg? Why would anyone ever think that this egg had Luffy in it? And listen, I'm not saying this theory is definitely true. I don't know if I even believe it. However, two things are true. First, across 1,000 chapters to this day, the truth of Luffy's birth and his origins are still being kept extremely hidden. And two, like it or not, there is a worrying amount of evidence that the most likely thing that this egg was storing was in fact Luffy. Or to be precise, Joy Boy Reborn. And here's the thing. Everything else that we've been told about Luffy's origins, such as his father being Dragon, all of it would still be true. Makes no sense? Well, stick with me for the rest of this video, and by the end, you will be just as confused as I am over the possibility that Luffy's story began with him literally being hatched into this world out of an egg. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more videos every week. To begin with, before laying out any evidence, we need to make one simple assumption. The assumption is that this egg is important. Because technically the egg doesn't necessarily need to be important. As we know, Oda is free to tease random things in the story that ultimately have zero relevance, and the egg may just be one of them. Now, the egg is featured prominently pretty much every time we see the Roger Pirates. It seems really strange to keep including such a mysterious object if it's never important in the story, and so while Oda may just be messing with us, for the sake of this video, and for the sake of trying to actually solve what might be in the egg, let's make the simple assumption that the egg is an actual mystery that matters to the story. And with that, everything we actually know about the egg comes to a dead end. There are absolutely no good leads on this egg. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, that I have seen anywhere from anyone that has been a good guess at what has hatched from the egg. All we can assume is that whatever hatched from it must be some sort of a living being, and among living beings, there is nothing we know of that fits. Famous creatures like Zunisha, Oars, or even Kaido, they were all born long before we see the egg. So maybe it's a prominent individual, but yet again, nothing fits. Momonosuke was born on Roger's ship. Shirahoshi was born to Otohime. Vivi was born to Nefertari Titi. Im was born centuries ago. Blackbeard was alive when we see the egg. There is literally no one we know, animal or human, that makes sense to have come out of this egg. All we know is that Roger deemed the egg important enough to be carrying around for years on his ship, and that egg is no longer around, meaning it very possibly hatched at some point. So then why Luffy? I mean, isn't Luffy automatically eliminated as an option? Because we also know his origins. His father was Dragon, which means that Luffy's mom must have been some woman that Dragon loved, right? Well, that's not technically true. Oda has actually never given a single detail about Luffy's supposed biological mom, or even confirmed that Luffy has one. Reddit user Jungkyojin made a post clearing up a lot of false claims about Luffy's mom. Some claim that Oda said in an SBS that he would soon draw Luffy's parents. That's not true. There technically was an SBS where Oda said to look forward to the next volume where Luffy's parent would appear. Note the Japanese kanji for parent used could mean singular or plural, and the next volume Dragon appeared, which means that Oda was just hinting at Dragon. There are claims that Oda said in an SBS that Luffy's mom has already appeared in the manga in the background, but this is not true either. There's actually no such SBS that says this. There are claims that Oda said that he already knows what Luffy's mom looks like and acts like. However, this is actually something that he said many years ago, where he did describe what Luffy's mom's appearance and personality would be, and then the character who was soon introduced after this that matched that exact description that he laid out turned out to be Dadan, Luffy's adoptive mother, but not technically biological mother. Basically, there's not one hint inside the manga or in any external interview that Luffy's mother even exists as a character. All we have been told is that Dragon is Luffy's father. There are a lot of fan assumptions that readers have made, such as that Luffy's mother must have been a celestial dragon that Dragon loved, or that Luffy's mother was killed by celestial dragons and that's what made Dragon a revolutionary. But interestingly, we see that Dragon was a freedom fighter long before Luffy was born, so it's impossible for the death of Luffy's hypothetical mother to have been this pivotal turning point for Dragon to turn against the world government. Whatever made Dragon decide to rebel against the world government, yes, it may have been the death of some woman that he loved, but it cannot have been Luffy's mother, as Luffy wouldn't be born for years. So let's step away from the idea of Luffy's mother for a moment, since we have literally nothing to go off either within the manga or from any of Oda's interview quotes ever. Let's just look at the story of Luffy himself in isolation. It is no secret that the story of One Piece is heavily inspired by the story of Sun Wukong. Monkey D. Luffy is based on the monkey hero Sun Wukong from the epic Journey to the West. Luffy is, throughout One Piece, symbolized by a monkey. Luffy's story begins in the east and covers his journey to the west around the world, just like Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong's story involved him challenging the 4 Dragon Kings of the sea, much like Luffy challenges the 4 Emperors of the sea. And Sun Wukong's story is most famously centered around him invading heaven and challenging the gods themselves. And as we know, Luffy's entire story is heading towards rebellion against heaven, defeating the gods that rule the world, the Celestial Dragons. You would be shocked at how explicitly a lot of One Piece mirrors the Journey to the West, right down to certain iconic scenes, such as Sun Wukong being slapped down to earth for his disobedience by Buddha, which is a sequence that is very literally recreated in One Piece itself. So Luffy and the entire story of One Piece is heavily inspired by Sun Wukong and the tale of the Journey to the West. Here's the thing, Sun Wukong was born from an egg. That's right. His story begins with hatching from an egg. Specifically, there was a magic stone that produced a magic egg, and Sun Wukong is then born from that egg. And most interesting is what causes that egg to hatch. The wind. When the wind blows upon the egg hatches and gives birth to Sun Wukong. And so here we come back to Dragon. I said at the start that this theory technically still makes sense with Luffy having no mother, but Dragon still being his father. What does Dragon represent in One Piece? What is Dragon's ability most likely to be? The wind. Everywhere Dragon goes, the wind accompanies him. So with this in mind, we may have an answer as to how Dragon could be Luffy's father, even if there was no biological mother. Because if Oda is choosing to mirror the story of Sun Wukong particularly tightly, well, what if this egg finally hatched thanks to Dragon? What if Dragon, through the use of wind, caused the egg to hatch, giving birth to a child? And depending on how important the egg was supposed to be, how long it has been waiting to hatch, and just how important Luffy is destined to be, perhaps hatching the egg was essentially releasing the child of prophecy that had maybe been stored inside the egg since the Void Century itself. Because if we walk down this road, we get to some uncomfortable questions. Why did the Nika fruit travel through history all this way, specifically to find its way to Luffy? When Zunisha says that Joy Boy has returned, what if he doesn't mean symbolically, but literally? What if all these people waiting for Joy Boy weren't waiting for someone to inherit the title of Joy Boy, but for the literal return of Joy Boy? Why are so many people referencing a specific time in history, a moment of prophecy that they are all waiting on? Maybe everyone was waiting for the specific time that the egg would be ready to be hatched, releasing, if not the next coming of Joy Boy, maybe Joy Boy himself reborn. I don't know how much of a coincidence it is that the same arc that Oda began revealing all of these special circumstances around Luffy, that he is set to be the next Joy Boy, that he is the inheritor of the Sun God fruit, that he is supposed to fulfill the will of D. That is the same arc that Oda started showing us the egg repeatedly. Maybe the egg was the last piece of Luffy's mystery that Oda is still saving for one more arc down the line. Maybe Egghead. Alright, I'm just kidding, probably going too far with the egg stuff there. But I do think a few things line up weirdly well here. To begin with, just symbolically, for many of us, our first introduction to Luffy was him breaking out of a barrel. I think the imagery here would be extremely similar to his origin, his birth, being coming out of an egg. Both symbolize freedom in their own way. It would also then make sense why Roger kept the egg on his ship and protected it for so long rather than eating it. He may not have known the details till he got to Laughdale, but he might have known from the start that it was meant to hatch something related to an important prophecy. And it's also entirely possible that the egg was something that was originally stored on God Valley that Roger took away from there to protect after the Battle of God Valley. And interestingly, originating from a mythical egg in some ways fits our perception of Luffy as a character. Luffy is often not written as a normal human being. He's written more like a force of nature, or the embodiment of a concept. We never hear his thoughts like we do with other characters, because rather than grounding him in realism, Luffy is meant to feel like a sort of pure, free-spirited being. This would fit even more if we learn that Luffy is actually born through supernatural origins. And lastly, especially in recent arcs, the idea that Luffy is special in certain ways has been played up more and more, and with the ideas of prophecies and chosen ones becoming more prominent, and Oda already coming dangerously close to implying that Luffy's role was predestined from birth, the possibility that Luffy was a child born of supernatural origins may actually hold more merit now. I know a lot of you may feel skeptical, and I am too, but I will just point out that if 2 years ago, someone had told you that Luffy's rubber fruit may in fact actually be the legendary sun god fruit that specifically chose Luffy to be the new Joy Boy, well, a lot of us would have called that crazy as well. And funnily enough, Luffy wouldn't even be the only Sun Wukong inspired shonen hero that follows the egg origin. Goku also famously originated from an egg-shaped capsule that is noted to be a direct reference to Sun Wukong. However, all that being said, let's be real. The egg idea is pretty crazy. There are some clear counterarguments, such as that Luffy's physical appearance and character traits clearly match other members of his family line, like Garp and Dragon. However, the counter-argument to that is that Luffy's appearance and character traits also clearly matched Ace as well, who turned out not to be his biological brother at all, despite the fact that in terms of appearance and mannerisms, they definitely seemed like they were related. As such, Luffy being a D-Tribe member born from an egg, he could still be unrelated to Garp and Dragon's line directly, but simply by virtue of also being a member of the D-Clan just from centuries ago, maybe he would happen to have similar traits to the D-line of the Monkey family. However, the other major counterargument is that the egg is simply too big. Why would Oda draw such a big egg if it's just storing Luffy? Weirdly enough, I think that that's the single biggest and most straightforward problem with this theory. There's no real reason for the egg to be drawn that big, and it makes it more likely that it was housing some giant creature than a person. On the other hand, it's also possible that Oda just exaggerated the egg's size to make sure that it always stood out on the page when he featured it on Roger's ship, who knows. Oda has been very inconsistent with exaggerating sizes whenever he feels like in the past, after all. At the end of the day, Luffy hatching out of an egg is unlikely, but it fit in such a strangely bizarre way that it felt worth sharing. After all, there are no other good theories out there for what came out of the egg, and there are zero hints as to who Luffy's mom is or whether she even existed. And it gets really suspicious when you consider that Luffy was based off a character that came out of an egg that hatched specifically when the wind blew upon the egg, and Luffy's only known parent represents the wind. So ultimately unlikely, but as I said, suspiciously possible. So you all let me know in the comments below what else might have come out of the egg, and if you enjoyed this video then definitely like and subscribe. And I'll discuss any other interesting theories regarding the egg in my weekly podcast, which you can get by supporting me as a patron. Just hit the link in the description below.